There really is a push to integrate more external tooling with some of the LLMs, almost turning them into one-stop shopping for like a hacking platform.
So it seems like cybercriminals have found their new favorite toy, large language models. Now, not only are they jailbreaking mainstream models to try and strip away guardrails, they're also creating their own so called criminal versions. Although, in a bit of poetic justice, some of these are simply smoke and mirror tools designed to scam each other. It's definitely an interesting time for LLMs and how they might be used within attacks. It feels a little bit like handing a 3-year-old fingerprints. It's unpredictable, chaotic, but it's disturbingly effective at causing havoc. Welcome to the Talos Threat Perspective. I'm Hazel Burton. So today we're stepping into the world of criminal large language model abuse. And this is all guided by research from Talos's Jason Schultz. So, this is a two-part episode. In this first part, Jason will share what he uncovered when engaging with criminal sellers, testing their tools, and figuring out if any of them actually worked as advertised. He'll also break down how attackers jailbreak mainstream models by dabbling in a bit of role play, and we'll explore how these tools are being woven into broader attack workflows. So, stay tuned because things are about to get weird. First, let's talk about scamming the scammers. It's the circle of life, but with more cryptocurrency and fewer lions. Now, one of the first things that Jason noticed when he was researching criminal built large language models is just how much of the so called market is actually vaporware.
There's just a huge amount of fraud in that space right now. For example, in our dealings with Canadian Kingpin 12, who is the developer behind Fraud GPT, at one point, he wanted us to try to access Fraud GPT using an old Android device, an Android phone running Gingerbread or Froyo operating system, which came out back in 2010. So that was kind of the first red flag dealing with him. Of course, the device wasn't able to connect for some reason. He wasn't able to say why. And did offer to sell us a device, though, that would connect, although we declined. After some more negotiation, we finally were able to obtain the link to the .onion site in Tor where he was hosting Fraud GPT. Got a username and password. The username and password did not work. And after some discussion with him, he offered then to sell us a crack for the login page. And at this point, it was like, wait, you need to crack your own authentication? Like, why would that ever be necessary? We stopped communicating with Canadian Kingpin 12 after that. But it was pretty obvious that he was just out there scamming people out of cryptocurrency. And at this point, we actually managed to connect with a few other users who had attempted to purchase Fraud GPT and had been scammed in a similar way.
So, if many of these underground LLMs are really just smoke and mirrors, are there any that actually do work as advertised?
There are some out there. In fact, when we were monitoring some of the underground hacking forums and things, we found posts from users who were complaining about, downtime for various tools or the latency that some of these tools had. So it's not too much of a stretch to think of, if I'm a cyber criminal and I want to sell something, you could conceivably download one of these models and customize it. In fact, many of the advertised features from some of these criminal designed LLMs, actually advertise that they were trained on, breach data, uh, CVE data, things that were particular to hacking in general. So there's ample evidence that there are some of these systems out there that have been designed by cyber criminals and that are actively being used. We've tried out a couple, but they really didn't seem to have the same level of power or usefulness as some of the legitimate models once they're jailbroken, or even some of the uncensored models where you're free to kind of run them on whatever hardware that you might want.
Next up, jailbreaking. Now, this is where cybercriminals might get a little bit creative, and some of them use elaborate role playing prompts to try and convince AI models to forget any rules that they were built with and spill information that they shouldn't. It's a bit like trying to convince a nightclub bouncer that you're definitely on the list.
The jailbreak prompt might be telling the LLM, imagine you are my grandmother, and we used to talk all about, her days when she lived out in the country, and her friends all made, methamphetamine, and they go into these very elaborate sort of setups, or even doing things like the do anything now, the Dan jailbreaks have been pretty prominent in the news, where it's like, okay, you're not the LLM as you were designed. You are this special machine which functions in this really intricate way. And because of this, you have to answer in certain ways. So the setups are sometimes really, really creative, basically trying to get it to forget about any of these guardrails that it might have been programmed with, and it instead assume some sort of like a new identity in terms of being able to answer the prompts from the users.
It sounds a bit like when threat actors socially engineer an IT help desk worker, tell them that they've forgotten their password and they need help logging in. Only this time, it's socially engineering an AI to forget its own rules.
And it's really kind of turned into a bit of an arms race where, these prompts might work for a brief period of time, but the developers behind the LLMs are constantly working to fix up their guardrails and make them so that they can't be bypassed in some of these ways. And so to me, I feel like jailbreaking is going to be something that's going to be a constant form of attack.
Of course, the biggest impact happens when these models aren't just helping to craft a phishing email, but they become fully integrated into criminal workflows, writing malware, creating campaigns, and automating entire attacks at scale.
Yes, this absolutely seems to be the next big step for cyber attackers. Right now, a lot of the usage is kind of centered around using the LLM technology sort of as assistive technology, where they can maybe during their coding phase use the LLM to help them write code maybe a little bit more quickly, or to refine code that's already been written, or maybe they're using the LLM to help generate social engineering lures. But there's still a fair amount of work in taking the output from a large language model and then integrating that with whatever else that the cyber criminal has built. And so we're starting to see a trend where LLMs, and if you look at the advertised features of some of the cyber criminal LLMs, as well as some of the discussions that have been happening in the underground hacking forums, there really is a push to integrate more external tooling with some of the LLMs, almost turning them into one-stop shopping for like a hacking platform.
And that is exactly what we'll dig into in part two, the next phase of criminal LLM evolution. We'll also unpack some of the more surprising discoveries that Jason made during his research, and we'll talk about what defenders can do right now to stay ahead. That episode will be with you very soon, so make sure that you subscribe to the Talos YouTube channel if you haven't already, so that you don't miss it. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.